Welcome to The Confidence Curve with Ashley and Rick Bowers, where personal and professional journeys define the art of scaling with confidence. Whether you're a business leader navigating change or someone seeking personal growth, this podcast offers insights and actionable advice to help you thrive. Now let's dive into today's conversation with our incredible guest.
So welcome to the Confidence Curve. We are here with Michelle Sirocco of the Televerde Foundation, and I couldn't be more excited about having you on our podcast today. Rick and I have got to know Michelle over the last several years with Rick, but I think we've known each other for, 15-ish years?
A long time ago.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Maybe
Yeah.
not date ourselves. If we can just start and maybe a little bit about yourself and the Televerde Foundation before we get started into the questions.
Sure. So I always question and wonder where I should start the story because it's a long story. And I usually joke around and say, well, it all began when I was 2. But that's just being glib. So the Televerde Foundation is a local organization that I was asked to start back in 2021, actually March 1st of 2021. And it is a nonprofit workforce development organization that specializes in providing incarcerated women with jobs and training and support and services to prepare to come back into the community and into meaningful and rewarding work and successfully stay out of prison for the rest of their lives.
It's such amazing work. And I have the privilege of serving on the board for Michelle as well. And just meeting the ladies, going out to the facilities and just seeing every single day what you're doing for them. And really want to dig into the conversation today about what they're doing for us, right? And enriching our lives as being a part of it. And really how the foundation connects with employers and the work that they can do and the amazing employees that they can become. For organizations that are willing to provide that second chance and, look past a label and really look to that human. So can't wait to dig into the conversation.
Yeah, I would say I'm most excited about your golf tournament every year. It's at an amazing golf course and it raises a lot of money for the foundation and those kinds of things. And so this year was the second annual, and I feel like it was a great turnout and a lot of fun. So beautiful day for that this year.
Awesome. Thank you. We had a great time and are looking to set the date for next year at the same location.
Great.
Awesome. So can you talk to me just a little bit about some of the numbers and the statistics around the work that you're doing and the fact that the foundation has been so successful in eliminating that, that rebound effect and just how difficult it is for women when they're exiting to get employment and to have people look past that and kind of really that core piece of why you started the foundation?
Absolutely. So there's a lot of things to talk about in that question. And I think I might actually like to set up the stage a little bit to help people understand the situation. Specifically, like what does incarceration look like in our world? And things people don't actually think about, or maybe you have heard about it, that 70% of the people in our country, I'm sorry, I just lost my thought process at 70%. It's not 70%. It's 70 million people in our country have a criminal record. What this actually means is, to put it into perspective when you think about it, is that if you know somebody with a college degree, you probably know somebody who has a criminal record because it is 1 in 3 people in our country. It's a lot. And it continues to grow. And when somebody has a felony conviction, it's like a scarlet letter that follows them forever. The challenges associated with having a criminal record, being directly impacted by the justice system, really show up in so many ways. And one of the biggest ways is employment. For somebody with a criminal record, they have the unemployment rate is 5 times that of the national average. And it's even worse for women. In fact, for women, 1 full calendar year after being released from incarceration, over 50% of women will still be unemployed. And the thing that's really disturbing about it is when we think about incarceration and it's supposed to be rehabilitation and correction and that you come out of prison and you should be able to reintegrate into the community, it's just simply not the story. Every year, there are about 700,000 people that are released from prison. And the recidivism rate is, depending on what frame of time you look at can range from anywhere from 20% in the first year to 80% within 8 years. And the number one predictor for recidivism is joblessness.
Mm.
And so, as I said, with an unemployment rate 5 times the national average, it's no wonder why
Yeah.
we have such a high recidivism rate and why our prison populations are so full. There's currently about 2 million people who are incarcerated in the United States. So that's kind of just helping to understand. And I'm talking big numbers. We're sitting here in little old Phoenix, Arizona. But we have 41,000 people in prison here in Arizona, and close to 10% of them are women. And
Mhm.
so that's where our heart and our passion is and has been, is with serving the women here in Arizona, but also in a few other states, Indiana and Florida.
I think one of the things that was really eye-opening to me, and this has to be, I don't know, probably 8 or 10 years ago, and you and I were having lunch at Red Robin, actually. It really stood out to me. And we were sitting there and talking, and you just looked across it to me and you're like, Ashley, half the women that are in there are women, just like us. They're educated women, they've had professional careers, and like you think about it, it's a bad back pushing through a deadline, and there's a prescription and things derail. And so the reasons behind it, and to just put that blanket scarlet letter, just as you say, across people, and not understand their story, not understand what got them to that place, but then even having the opportunity to go out and tour the facility at Perryville. I did not know what to expect, and I was terrified. And like my entire interaction with the justice system as a human being is I have been pulled over one time in my life, right? So I was terrified and did not know what to think. And within seconds, you almost forget that you're in a prison, because obviously you have the option to walk out, like, right? Like, that. But your interaction with the humans that are in there is just, and they're humans, right? Like,
Yeah.
we put these other labels on them. They are humans, and they are necessary, and they are a part of our society and our future. And I think that day they had like a 30-minute heads up that we were coming, and they had a PowerPoint together. They were standing up and presenting in front of complete strangers. They knew like the mission, the story, they could answer questions, so articulate. And it was amazing. Like, anyone would be lucky to employ any one of the women that I was able to interact with that day. But for some reason, we don't think about that, and we don't go to them as a resource, and even maybe shy away from it. So how is the foundation breaking through some of those barriers, and what do employers need to know about the benefits of bringing on formerly incarcerated women who, they've been through it and they've worked so hard, especially if they were part of the Televerde Foundation. They have self-efficacy. They've gone through assessments, which I'm sure Rick will jump into, and they've learned about themselves, and they're ready to make a difference. Like, what do they need to know?
Well, I think the first thing to think about is, I think you kind of touched on it. Like, the people who exist in our prisons are people just like you and I. They're people who went left when they should have gone right. Circumstances in their life led to whatever decisions they made on the worst days of their life. Right. And so I always say, do you want to be judged for the worst decisions you made on the worst day of your life? Yeah. And how many of us can say, in full transparency, full honesty, that we have never gotten behind the wheel after one too many, or when we were in college or wherever we were, we didn't do X, Y, or Z that could have resulted in us ending up there. So that's the first thing, is just recognizing that these are people that, by virtue of whatever circumstance, made some decisions that resulted in them being there. But then it's about what happens when you're there. How do people do their time? And we can be led to believe that what we see on TV and in the movies is what's really happening in our prisons. And certainly in some pockets, in some places, perhaps, yes. But in general, it's people who have found themselves in a spot. And when they got there, they realized, I need to figure out how to have a better life. I need to do something different if I'm going to survive. And so that's essentially what the foundation does, is we provide everybody with that opportunity, a platform on which they can rebuild their lives. And it's we've developed a really, really comprehensive program that addresses the entire human being, right? Like, people want to say words like comprehensive and holistic and wrap around. And I don't know what the exact word to describe it is. I say right? Like we're all people and we're a complete person, and we help the women get right in all aspects, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, vocationally, educationally, and financially. And right, so the program is built around all of these elements that enable a person to really use their time to come out of prison a better person than they were when they went in. So
So I know you've done some work with training the foundation with the
Mhm.
assessments on emotional intelligence. You want to kind of add to that?
Yeah, we had a very fun day when I came down to the office with all of the team, and we went through the emotional intelligence training and went through the certification process. We utilized the TTI Success Insights Emotional Intelligence. They were gracious enough to donate the assessments to the foundation, but it really kind of creates the number one thing that I think can help them get to that next space, which is the self-awareness. And so helping an individual, whether it's somebody that's incarcerated or working with a very successful CEO in an organization, they still need to have that self-awareness and self-regulation. And sometimes we're aware of what's going on, but we can't regulate it back. And so what kind of results are you seeing with the girls that have gone through the emotional intelligence assessment, and kind of are they
yeah,
picking up on it?
it's incredible. So emotional intelligence, the whole idea stems from years ago. My boss told me like, "Oh, you need to develop your emotional intelligence." And I went, "The does that mean? And how does one go about doing that?" And so when I was tasked with starting the foundation and developing curriculum to help the women prepare, I thought, okay, well, emotional intelligence, how do we teach it? And fortunately, since the decades ago when I got that advice, lots of people have
Figured out what it is.
figured out what it is and how to talk about it and how to develop it. And so emotional intelligence is part of our core curriculum. And so you were talking about what can businesses expect from hiring our women. Like from day one, we start on, personality types, your personal core values, developing emotional intelligence, critical thinking, giving and receiving feedback. Because if you've ever been in a job and you sat down for your performance review and you got bad feedback and all you could do was go, I can't understand that. That's not true. I don't believe them, right? I'm not that person. So teaching people how to receive feedback, but also how to effectively give it, not just to people, beneath them, but to peers, and give feedback to your boss and be honest and transparent. So really developing those essential skills that I think are really critical at work, because we can teach people job skills. That's the
Mhm.
easy part. The vocational part is easy. People go to prison all the time and learn vocational skills. You can get college degrees, you can get HVAC, you can get plumbing, you can all kinds of trades and certificates um, to do jobs, but without the essential skills, without emotional intelligence and critical thinking and communication skills and public speaking skills, the ability
Mhm.
to clearly articulate an idea or a thought in a meaningful manner, right? Or even the ability to de-escalate a heated situation. So we focus on, that's like the first semester of everything that we do, is to help people like develop those essential human skills that so many of us are lacking.
Yeah, the saying goes, you hire for skills and fire for attitude. And
Mm.
the attitude is a big piece, and it's a choice. Attitude's a choice. The hard skills are things that you have to kind of learn and kind of understand that. But it's the hard skills versus the people skills, and the people skills kind of get you to that next level. The hard skills get you in a door. And so the more you can kind of understand that, the bigger difference it makes. One of the things additionally with EQ is one negative event can affect your decision-making ability for up to 4 hours
Yeah.
on average. And so think about having someone road rage or something like that. That's that simple. And now you're making poor decisions behind the wheel, or you walk into a negative email in the office and you're like frustrated the rest of the morning, and
Yep.
those kinds of things. So that's such a powerful tool to kind of work through.
Well, and that's what it's amazing to watch the light bulbs go off when we
Mhm.
teach the emotional intelligence, and then they get
Mhm.
their report and they work with their manager on their assessment, and because it tells them these are the things that I need, and watching how they just bloom. And it is one of the things, at end of program, that people say like emotional intelligence was just a biggie for me, like
Mhm.
because it helps them regulate their emotions. And they didn't get there because they were good at regulating emotions and reacting effectively in, rough situations. So yeah, it's such a great piece of the program.
Yeah. And, it's interesting because so many times, like with assessments, right, there are certain assessments where you're kind of hardwired, you are who you are. But with the emotional intelligence, it is something that can be developed.
Yeah.
Right. So no matter where they are when they're starting, they, like you said, like there's to-dos and things like that where they can continue to grow it. Kind of leads me to the topic of employee engagement, right?
Yeah.
Every organization out there struggles with it. Some more than others, different times, it might be more difficult than others, but can you just give me some examples or even just your thoughts in general on how engaged and committed and loyal these women are when they take employment? I know some of the stats are unbelievable as far as their retention and staying in not only with one company, but within a specific job in a company. So can you talk to that a little bit based on the programming?
Yeah. So let's talk just a little bit high level stats about the results that we've been able to achieve since we started the program in 2020. We've had 985 women go through the program. I'm really excited because next week we will enroll number 1,000.
Wow.
So yeah, we're really excited.
Congratulations.
645 women have transitioned back into the community, and the results that they're realizing are just incredible. So 94% of them have been employed within 45 days, average starting salary of about $40,000 a year. But specifically to your point, like the commitment that they have when they get into what we call a B job. So for perspective, we talk a lot about A, B, C jobs. And A job is like, look, you got to get out, you got to get a job, you got to get money coming in. Your responsibility when you get there is to show up, to deliver, to demonstrate, right, and get a raise, get an increase, get promoted, or get stable enough that you can now go out and find that B job, a better job.
Mm-hmm.
And so a better job is defined as generally anything that $40,000 a year or more that you can see a pathway to what your next stage is in that job. So it's not working at Taco Bell thinking you're going to get the team lead job, but it's a pathway. And then when you get into that better job, now it's time to start to continue the investment in yourself, continue to learn, continue to grow, get some schooling so that you can now progress it to your career job. What is your career aspirations? And so the women who, once they land in what we define as a B job, their average tenure right now is about 540 days. So about 18 months. And considering the runway that we're talking about is pretty short, but these are, entry level, mid-entry level positions. And that's the space where most companies are having the hardest time retaining people, their hardest time attracting people, and the hardest time retaining people in those jobs. And so we have a pool of talent graduating right now, about 300 women a year who are eager for these jobs. And when they get there, they are incredibly loyal and dedicated. Because one of the things I can tell you from experience is that the only worse than telling somebody you've been to prison, right? That there's nothing worse than having to tell. So you don't want to, the only thing worse than going to prison is actually having to tell somebody you've been there.
Gotcha. Okay.
There you go. Tongue tied a couple times today, not usual. Yeah. Like, so if you could imagine, like when you come out of prison, you don't exactly want to run around telling everybody, hey, I went to prison. So once you get the job and you've gone through the process of explaining it and somebody has said, hey, I'll give you a chance.
Mhm.
I'll give you an opportunity. Like you really want to get in there and prove yourself. And you don't want to have to leave and go repeat the cycle again. And so people tend to stay incredibly loyal. Televerde, the for-profit business, is a phenomenal example. I mean, the average tenure of the women who go to work at Televerde after incarceration is something like 8.5 years.
Mhm.
I mean, we just love to stick around.
Well, and I think too, just when you think about 18 months, right, in a single position within an organization, the competition for those roles are going to be new grads coming out of coming out of college, and they're coming in. It's their first job out of college. They're trying to make that mark for themselves, and they're in that same range. But within 6 months, they're like, "Where's my promotion? I'm ready. Like, let's go next." And so it's constantly as like a manager and a leader of like, "Okay, hold on, like." Let's throttle back. Let's do this. Let's do that. And like taking them through a path. Whereas the engagement with these women and staying in and, kind of leaning into that position and having the patience and the emotional intelligence and all the things that they're taught through the programming, I think is just monumentally beneficial to organizations.
Yeah. Well, and it's even the jobs, because the jobs that they'll take and want and be thrilled with are the ones the college kids won't
They
touch.
don't want, yeah.
Right. And so, and they're not likely to be 18 months in going, so when am I going to be a director?
Right.
Well, when do I get my VP title?
Yes.
Yeah, everybody just wants to check a box and move to the next step.
Yeah.
And it's just not that simple. What do you find? How does the experience that they bring, and some of them don't have a lot of experience, some of them probably have a ton of experience. How does that play into the different types of jobs that they can get?
Well, I think that does play a lot into it, right? So some of the women that have more experience can land into higher level inside sales or IT positions, where the ones that don't have experience but have done all the training, they're more likely coming into those customer service, entry level inside sales roles. The space where we are really struggling to get people positions, which is kind of baffles me, is in the IT space. So these women are getting certified from Cisco and Google in IT networking, cybersecurity, project management, and it's really hard to get somebody to take a chance. They have all the credentials in the world, and it's hard to get anybody to take a chance on them without actually experience, right? So it's the old adage, like, how do you get experience if you don't, and so that we bump into that a lot.
So kind of just thinking through all the different experiences you've had since starting the foundation, can you pull maybe a personal story that really embodies the success of the work that you're doing inside the foundation and with the women? I'm sure you have several.
I know there's so many of the women with such great stories. Geez, it's always hard to pick one. I guess probably, one of my favorites is probably Ashley.
Ashley,
Yeah. And Ashley was in the very, very first cohort of our workforce development program. And she's probably tired of me telling this story, but she had been sentenced to 10 years in prison. She was at 8 years, and she had done no programming whatsoever. And we were launching this new program, looking for 15 people to follow me on this vision that I had to go build this workforce development program, and who was going to be brave enough to follow along. And she signed up for the program only because her counselor or prison boss kind of told her that she should do it. And day one came, and she showed up at the door and kind of knocked on the door and said, hey, I need to talk to you. And she's like, I'm not going to partake in the program. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And she's like, well, I'm really busy. I'm like, kind of look around.
Like, you're in prison.
Look around the prison. I'm looking at her in her shorts and her shower shoes. And I'm like, you're really busy. Really? What do you got going on? And she's like, well, I'm going home in a couple months, and I have a lot to do. And I'm like, oh, like, well, what do you got to do? Well, I'm planning, and, and I'm thinking about what I'm going to do. And so I just have a lot going on. I go, okay, well, are you sure? Like, are you sure you're not scared? Because I understand if you're scared, because this kind of seems like a lot. No, I'm not scared. She's like, I'm just busy. So she stomps off, and I'm like, okay. And so week goes by, and I keep passing her every day. I walk by, and she, looks at me. And so then finally, about the end of the first week, she comes up and she's like, I think I made a mistake. So when you do the next class, she's like, I'll enroll in the next class. I'm like, oh, well, you know what? We still have a desk available if you want. Like, come see me on Monday, and let's talk about it. And so she came on Monday, and the other girls that had been there for a week, I'm like, okay, this is like Survivor. They're going to vote you on or off. And the other girl said, well, she can stay. Anyhow, so she goes through program. She insists that she doesn't like to learn. I'm a terrible student. I can't learn anything. She starts her Arizona State University classes. So all the women do 6 credits from ASU in communications. Starts the classes and realizes that she's like falling in love with learning, and she can't get enough of it. And so she goes through the whole 6-month program and realizes that she is not prepared to go home, that her plans for where she was going to go home to were not safe and not healthy. Because we do a lot of work on like boundaries and what are your plans and, what are you going to do for the future? And she goes into her counselor and she waives her parole and makes a decision to stay in prison for another year. Like, that's stunning to think about. And she just basically said, I need to stay here so I can learn more skills and really kind of develop myself to be prepared to go out and do the right thing. And so she hired on at the Televerty, the for-profit company, and then ultimately hired on at the foundation as a project coordinator, one of my very first hires. She was released on Valentine's Day. And what I love about the story about being released on Valentine's Day is she went to prison behind some really bad dysfunctional relationships because she was highly codependent and all of those things that we can be. And she was released on Valentine's Day. And she said, I was released and I didn't need anybody and I didn't need anybody to need me. And she started her role at the Televerty Foundation 2 weeks later as a program specialist. And since that time, it's now been 18 months, a little over 18 months. She has enrolled at Arizona State University. She's completed her project management certification. She's been promoted and she has reunited with her children and just really launched a beautiful life, better than she says, better than I ever imagined possible, even before I went to prison.
I think what's so beautiful about that story is that she achieved a level of freedom that nobody else can provide her and nobody else can take away from her.
Yeah.
Through being incarcerated and going through programming and all of that, and was able to come out with that type of feeling and perspective and just confidence.
Yeah. Well, it's because it's so many things, right? It's the personal independence, it's financial independence, it's mental independence. Like, there's so many things, which is everything that we do is built on this concept of self-efficacy. And for employers, like, I think self-efficacy, for individuals, self-efficacy is incredible, but it's such a great gift for employers if your folks have self-efficacy, because it's basically when somebody realizes that, hey, you know what, I can learn something new, I'm capable of learning, and then they will invest the time and effort and the commitment and the persistence to actually learn it and then apply it and put it to work and achieve on the other side. So it's like, oh, maybe I could. Oh, yes, I can. And oh, by golly, I will. And then to keep repeating that cycle over and over. And so it creates this drive of always wanting to do more and try more.
So we've talked a lot about the purpose, but as a successful business leader, how do you balance the social impact with the profitability and keeping the business growing and thriving as you have?
Yeah, well, the beauty of nonprofit.
Or the funding, balance the funding, right?
The beauty of nonprofit. Like, the first thing that I learned is nonprofit does not mean no revenue.
Yes.
So I always laugh when people say, I want to start a nonprofit. I'm like, oh, it is not for the faint of heart. It is, look, it's a constant. And as somebody who didn't come into the nonprofit world with any experience in nonprofit, I think the first thing that I learned is that, I had a sales and marketing background, and like, all of a sudden now my job was to sell something that had no tangible it's just about, the impact and the power that we're having. And so, the balance is spending the time and finding all of the right grants and resources and funders that support this type of work. So there is that is something that's out there, but it's a lot of work and it's highly competitive. But we are, part of the way that we do this is through corporate sponsorships. So companies that recognize that they have a need for talent and are willing to make an investment or, get involved in creating their own, what I call prison to workforce pipelines. So you've got a talent gap, and I have highly motivated and dedicated people that can help you solve that problem. Our workforce development program is designed in such a way that we can, the curriculum, the second semester of their curriculum is interchangeable so that we can actually prepare people for companies' very specific in-demand jobs so that they are walking out job ready to walk into your organization and start to be productive from day one.
Mhm. I think that that's something, obviously businesses and individuals are always deciding, where to give the gifts that they're prepared to give in any particular year. But I just feel like definitely biased, but I feel like with the foundation, it's not just giving.
Yeah.
There are so many different ways in where organizations can have a very, very strong return. They can solve needs. There are tax benefits to hiring formerly incarcerated individuals, and so yes, there is the cause and the donations and all of that obviously makes the foundation go round, but there are those services for placement and training and development. I mean, that's obviously what we do,
Yeah.
right? Constantly coaching and developing employees, teaching them emotional intelligence, giving them their job skills, kind of pulling them back and saying, like, hey, like, let's pause and here's a career path and this is what we want to do. You're literally doing all of that work for these organizations. And in those, corporate sponsorships, if there's a need that anyone has out there for a specific skill set, with employees, as Michelle was saying, they can change out that curriculum. And so literally people can be being trained while they're in prison before they're on your payroll and then move into the organization and be ready to start being productive and contribute. And they're going to be extraordinarily loyal too. So, I mean, it really does solve a need both directions. It's a two-way street with the work that companies can do with the foundation. And I think that that's unique and special about the work you're doing.
Absolutely. Well, and it's certainly more valuable than just giving, right?
Mhm.
Of course, like, and I shouldn't say that. We graciously accept donations of all sizes and shapes and forms. Um, However, this is a solution to a business
Yes.
problem, and that is always how I viewed the work that we're doing. Is this is a societal problem, and it's a business problem, and it's a people problem. And I believe that when we can bring the three together, we can really have lasting impact on people's lives, on our communities, and on our workplaces. I
Mhm.
mean, it's what matters.
Mm. Well, it goes back to the conscious capitalism, and we're sitting in Mac 6, obviously, whereas the chapter is, but we've all done work in that space. And this is like a true, like, conscious capitalism movement. Every single person, it's good for all stakeholders involved, and we're community, obviously, the individuals, the company, the vendors, just all around. It makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, and when you think about conscious capitalism, and one of the words that tends to come to mind, at least for me, is the empathy, and that ties back to the emotional intelligence again, which in the categories in the TTI assessment, it's social awareness. It's like, how aware am I of how my actions and things are impacting other people? And I mean, that makes a huge difference in terms of communication and presenting yourself in a job interview and all of the pieces that people have to go through as they make transitions in their life.
Mhm. Can you talk a little bit too, as Rick was mentioning earlier, of kind of, balancing the purpose and the mission of the foundation with the business side of it? You and your team, you run it like a business. And you're in and your senior team meetings, your strategic planning. So what have been some of those strategies to make sure that the foundation is successful that you've pulled over from that for-profit side?
Yeah. It's a interesting question because when I was asked to do this, my immediate response was, I know nothing about running a nonprofit. I don't want to do this. I don't know how to do this. And my boss said, good, go run it like a business. And I was like, probably the best piece of advice anybody ever gave me, because I immediately just sat down and said, okay, build a business plan, mission, vision, values. What's our 3-year strategic plan? What's our 1-year tactics, goals, strategies, and tactics? Like the same exact framework that I employed, when I was, running the for-profit side of the business. Was I just basically applied those principles to what we do. And it's the basics of what you do in business. In fact, I'm getting ready here at Mac 6. 2 weeks from now, we've got the conference room reserved where we'll be doing our 2025 strategic planning session. And it's a matter of, we know what our long-term goal is, and our long-term goal is, now it's 2 more years out, and that's to be serving 1,000 people a year. And, then there's the 4 different pillars that we have to achieve to get those. And I think probably the biggest one that is relevant to anybody is, really diversifying your revenue streams. right? I can't be 100% on government grants because governments change, and with the changes in leadership can be changes in priorities, which then trickle down to changes in funding. So can't be ever dependent on one single customer, right? We all know that in business. So just really diversifying those revenue streams. And then, of course, the same thing, right? Processes, right? Streamlining our processes, operations. So how are we as efficient as possible so that we can achieve as much as we can with the least amount of expense? Because that is an unfortunate side of the nonprofit world, is that you are expected to do everything with less than 15% administrative overhead costs. So it makes it really hard. They expect you to pay people terribly, but I refuse to do that. So hence the reason why diversifying revenue is so important, right? And then really employee engagement and governance. So it's the same core principles that you apply to any business, and just staying true to what the mission is, I think, is probably the key thing. We talk a lot about swim lanes in business, and what is the mission? You have your mission statement, and always going back to how does this serve the mission, and staying focused, right? Because we can't be everything to everybody. So this is what our vision is. We're an employment first model, and we believe that people succeed when we empower them to have everything they need to get out of prison and have successful and meaningful and rewarding careers.
Awesome. So what's next for the foundation?
What's next for the foundation? As I said, our goal right now is to be serving 1,000 people a year. We're about halfway there with this the newest agreement that we just will do 5. We're expecting to serve about 525 people in 2025. So that's a good number.
Yeah,
I just
there you go.
realized that because I just did the calculations yesterday. I'm like, oh, it's 525. How convenient.
That is going to come up everywhere in Michelle's marketing. That sales and marketing background that's going to play on it for
It's
sure.
25 and 25. Yes, that's exactly right. So donate $25, 25,000, 2,500, because we're going to do 25 and 25.
She's going to grab her phone and start texting somebody the new marketing plan.
Yeah. So yeah, and so then it's a matter of where are we going? Right now, we are proactively setting up operations in Florida. We're going to start a little pilot in Florida. We're going to kind of try to get our way in, much the way we got our way in here in Arizona, small and subtle, and then we'll just kind of build up around it. So if you happen to be listening to this from anywhere near Miami, we'll have a big event there second week of December, opportunities to actually come and see the prison and get involved and be on the ground floor of the investment and the development of this program. And then really it's just looking at what's the next place that we're going to go. Illinois, Idaho, North Dakota, Ohio. There's a lot of places on my radar. It's a matter of what states, what organizations are committed to making a difference in the lives of the folks that are coming out of prison and finding ways to partner with them.
So back to the golf tournament, a couple people that played with us in the golf tournament didn't really know a lot about it, but as we were having conversations on the course, and then having all of your women on the course at the different holes telling their stories and things is always great. But how do companies, how can they get more involved if they want to potentially hire? What can they do to?
Well, the easiest way to get involved is to connect with me. Okay. LinkedIn I am actually somebody, if you connect with me on LinkedIn and you send me a personal message, or I will answer your message, I will connect with you, I will meet with you personally. I think relationships are the most important piece of the game. And so you can find me on LinkedIn, which is just Michelle with 2 L's, Cirocco, CIROCCO. That's an easy way. Or of course, our website, which is tellibertyfoundation.org. If you go to the website and you fill out a thing, somebody will contact you within 24 hours and see how we can partner with you, or if you'd like to get involved in volunteering, or you just want to know more about our programs. We love to share the stories. And I would tell you candidly, my favorite thing to do is to take people to prison. So if you are really interested in learning more and you'd like to actually get a sense for, especially from an employment standpoint, because sometimes it's hard. The media has taught us to think about what exists in our prisons in a certain way. And so to really like change that perspective. That's why I say nothing makes me happier than to take people to prison, because at the very least, when you go there, you realize it's not what you expected, and it helps to break down the stigmas associated with incarceration. And so I would encourage anybody who is interested in getting involved in our work to reach out and get involved in that way.
Don't sneak your cell phone in like Ashley did.
Don't say that on the radio.
I'm going to be having a different level of interaction with law enforcement after that. So yeah, and again, just to kind of amplify the point as we close up here, if you're an employer who is needing a solve for your workforce development and employment options, it's really a great place to start. Have a conversation, go have coffee with Michelle or one of the team members. And just, see what's out there. It really makes a difference. Personally, my entire perspective has changed with working with the foundation. So I'm forever grateful for that. And it's just amazing women, amazing stories, and a lot of good work has happened, and a lot of work needs to still happen. But businesses need this. We talked with businesses every single day that are looking for people who want to work and want to make a difference and really want to, get in and help a company grow. And there is a pool of talent available graduating each and every year. So definitely tap into them. But thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate your time and all the work that you're doing.
Thank you. I do actually, can I take one more comment? Because it occurred to me just this moment that I shared a lot of statistics with you about how many people have been through our program and how many people have come back into the community. And I also shared with you the high rates of recidivism and how many people go back to prison. And what I didn't share with you was the ultimate impact of our program. So for those 645 women that have transitioned back into the community over the past 4.5 years, only 3 people have gone back to prison. So less than 1% recidivism rate compared to national averages that range from 20 to 80%. So it's a program that works because, as I mentioned, employment is the biggest predictor, and the women are able to come out and get into good jobs and stay there, rebuild their lives, rebuild their families, and just stay out of prison forever.
And just as many children have been impacted by that too, right? That kind of the number goes kind of hand in hand.
Yeah, we talk about the ripple effect. So that's 60% of women in prison have children under the age of 18. And so for our women, for the 645 women that have come home, there are 1,217 children that are experiencing the positive benefit of having their mom come home and stay home, and really just breaking those generational cycles of poverty and incarceration.
Back to the impact. It impacts us all, our communities, our work, our companies, our hearts. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to The Confidence Curve. We hope today's episode left you inspired and ready to embrace your journey confidently. Remember, whether you're leading a team, growing your business, or pursuing personal growth, each step forward builds your curve. If you enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave us a review. For more insights and resources, visit us at apexgts.com. Until next time, keep climbing the curve.